And as you're having a seat, take your Bibles and open them up to Matthew chapter 6. We're finishing a journey we've been taking for the last several weeks, looking at numerous sayings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Oh, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. Looking at numerous sayings that Jesus had on the Sermon on the Mount, leading up to Palm Sunday, to Easter, to Holy Week, and all of this, and just asking ourselves, what is the way in light of what Jesus had to say? I think that's really important. The early church was known as the way because they followed the teachings of this guy, Jesus. And so we want to look to Jesus and see what he has to say about life and how we should apply it. This isn't all the exhaustive of the Sermon on the Mount. Land's sakes, I could spend a year just on the Sermon on the Mount, but rather just several things to think about in light of what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. As we're getting settled in, though, I want to ask you a question. What kind of crazy thing would you be willing to do for $10,000? Yeah. Play hide and seek by yourself. That's pretty crazy, yeah. Yep. Good luck with that one. People have done some crazy things for money, and I'd imagine a lot of us are like, the $10,000 doesn't seem like a lot. Well, in 1980 dollars, that was a lot. And a guy named Jay from the great state of Indiana, just south of us, was that he rose to the challenge that this radio station in Chicago put out to ask, what kind of crazy things would you do for $10,000? And he said, I would eat a tree. And he did. The eventual winner of this contest was put out by a radio station in Chicago asking for entries. He won. He said, I'll eat a tree. He did. He ate an 11-foot tall birch tree, leaves, roots, bark, and all for $10,000. This article was published in the Kokomo Tribune. He's from that area, Zionsville, Indiana. Armed with a pair of pruning shears, the Indiana State University sophomore, of course, college sophomore, sorry. Now context, right? Yeah. Ate the tree. The feat took 18 hours over the course of 3 days. The only condiment he had was French dressing for the massive leafy salad he consumed. When all was over, Jay complained of an upset stomach. Go figure. Apparently the bark was worse than his bite. Oh, that's bad. Crazy things people will do for money. You put a lot more zeros behind that, and people do a lot more crazy things. I've seen people online do that. It's like, what would you do for this amount of money? And they do it, and they get the money. Well, in the text we're about to dive into, Jesus is challenging the people, his audience, about their understanding of money and what treasure really is. And how actually there is a kind of treasure that you can build that does not perish like the kind on earth, but one that actually makes it on into eternity ahead of you. And so today we're going to be looking at this text in Matthew 6, 19 through 24, and asking ourselves, what is our treasure in light of what Jesus had to say regarding our investment in our treasures in eternity? And so at this time, Spencer, I think, is going to come forward. He's going to lead us in the reading of Matthew 6, 19 through 24. Would you stand out of respect for the reading of God's Word?
Matthew 6.
Oh, sorry, my bad. There you go.
Matthew 6, 19 through 24. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This is God's word. You may be seated.
Hopefully, see, I tell you what happens. The babies, they sleep in my arms and they get all ornery in my wife's. No, I'm just kidding, baby. I'm going to pay for that. I told Megan, I said, just let me hold her long enough to make my wife jealous. Well, hopefully when you came in, you received a bulletin. I'd encourage you to pull those out. There's some notes in there, I think, that are helpful, as well as some quotes that I think are helpful for us in understanding this text and really in applying it to our life. And Boy, Jesus has got a lot to say here, so we're going to dive in. Why is Jesus so concerned with what people value? Why does Jesus care with what people value in this life? Well, frankly, first of all, because Jesus knows any things we can acquire, any things people can acquire will expire. Tried to rhyme that on purpose so you can remember it, right? Jesus knew that any material thing these people had wasn't going with them after they died. Sometimes we've heard this expression, you don't see a U-Haul behind a hearse for a reason, because you can't take it with you. He's trying to get the people to understand this, that any material things of value would only hold value as long as those people gathering them up were alive. But after that, it wasn't going with them. And Jesus is holding out to them. We've been seeing this throughout the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is holding out to the people a new kind of reality that he's introducing to mankind because of what he came to do. That there was a kingdom that was not of this world, but had come into the world. A kingdom not of kings, not of presidents, not of halls of Congress, but a kingdom of hearts, of lives. And where those hearts were indicated where the treasure was. There was a kind of treasure that these people could actually accumulate that would be waiting for them on the other side of this life. Look with me at verse 19. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. There's a little booklet I commend to you. I really gleaned a lot from this last week by Randy Alcorn. It's called The Treasure Principle, and he had a quote. I put it in your notes, but it's just a little short book of really good. He said this: when Jesus warns us not to store up treasures on earth, it's not just because wealth might be lost, it's because wealth will always be lost. Either it leaves us while it leaves us while we live, or we leave it when we die. No exceptions. Realizing its value is temporary should radically affect our investment strategy. According to Jesus, storing up earthly treasures isn't simply wrong, it's just plain stupid. Jesus is telling the people, you got all kinds of stuff, it's not going with you. Anything you can acquire is going to expire in this life. If what you're investing is just in this life. But he's saying there's something else you can invest in. Let's go on to number 2, because Jesus knows that what we seek to possess is prone to possess us. Jesus knew how much earthly treasures and possessions had a tendency to grip the people's hearts and to cloud their minds from the greater reality that he's trying to communicate about this new kingdom. He knew that what people seek to possess is often what possesses them. In other words, you get all kinds of things, you got to do something to protect those things, which means you're spending more stuff to protect the things, and then if any of that stuff gets messed with or jacked with, you go nuts. And Jesus is saying, no. In verse 21, he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I think one of the important questions to ask at this point, because there's some people that have taken this text out of context into some wild ways. And I think it's important to ask, does God or does the scriptures teach or prohibit us having things? No! God blessed certain people throughout the Bible with all kinds of awesome things. Think of Job. He lost everything in the end. He gained everything back, plus more. Abraham was blessed beyond we can measure. Even in the New Testament, people were wealthy. People had things. The difference is the things didn't possess the people in light of the new reality because of Jesus. That kingdom that Jesus was promoting was what their reality was slated to. So is the Bible teaching that having things is bad? No. But the people who were most blessed while having things were those who realized where it came from and did not allow their possessions to possess them. But Jesus knew that was hard. It's not easy. Why? Because if we get really cool stuff, we got to protect it. Yesterday, my wife and I we got to go out to Pro Edge to share a message. I could share a message out at Pro Edge. We just got a new to us like a month ago. It's like a 10-year-old car, but it's new to us. And it's white, and we know that Pro Edge is in the middle of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and it had been raining, and we thought to ourselves before going out there, oh my word, our poor car, our poor white car driving down Blackbridge Road. You know, if you have things, you get concerned about them, right? But the key question I think that we have to ask ourselves in this regard is, who is possessing who? Is it the treasure possessing the person or the person possessing the treasure? And where is that treasure? Because where your treasure is, Jesus says, there your heart will be also. Jesus is telling the people, I think he teaches this throughout his teachings, that possessions have a tendency to blind people to the things that are truly valuable in this life. One time there was a young, wealthy, but miserable entrepreneur who was really dissatisfied with his life. And so he goes to meet up with this wise man. And he goes to the wise man to get some advice. And the wise man takes him to a window and he says, look out, what do you see? And he says, I see men, women, children, answered the rich, miserable man. The wise man took him to a mirror. And he says, now what do you see? I see myself, the rich man replied. And the wise man said, behold, in the window there is glass, and in the mirror there is glass. But the glass of the mirror is covered with but a little silver. And no sooner is the silver added than you cease to see others, but only see yourself. What I think Jesus is trying to get people to understand is there are things that are far more valuable than anything we can acquire on earth. And there are actually treasures that we can store up for ourselves on the other side of this life that are actually valuable and worth more than any earthly treasure. Regarding your treasure this morning, who possesses who, I think is a key question to ask in light of this. Thirdly, because Jesus knows seeing straight means seeing reality, seeing life for what it is. Not the material world, not the things we see, smell, hear, taste, touch. Not just those things, but things that are far much beyond. What do I mean by that? Well, Warren Wiersbe, in his commentary on this, said something really helpful. I think this is in your sermon outline. He said, we are accustomed, in the West especially, to dividing into the spiritual and the material, but Jesus made no distinction. In many of his parables, he made it clear that a right attitude toward wealth is a mark of true spirituality. Jesus realized there's much more to this life that he came to introduce the world to. There was a kingdom that was far more expansive than what we can see with and feel and what we can experience with our senses, but was one that was based in an eternal reality. And what we did here, what we choose to do here in this life, would actually affect that reality. Like there are actually things that we can do in this life that will set us up good for the next. I know there's some theological implications with that, but he says in verse 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are good, your whole body will be full of light. You got good eyes, you can see things the way they are. But if your eyes are bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Really dark. Because Jesus knows seeing straight means seeing reality, which begs the question, in what ways are we spending our time, our talent, our resources, our efforts, so as to affect the treasure that we will experience when we get to heaven? C.S. Lewis was writing a letter once to Mary Shelburne, and he wrote this. He says, has the world been so kind to you that you should leave it with regret? There are better things ahead than any we leave behind. Think about it. Some of us are, I would say most of us in this room are really, really blessed. Right? I mean, I've been to places where people live in stick huts and make $2, $3 a day selling goat's milk on the side of the road or camel's milk. You know, we're really blessed in America. Really blessed beyond what we can ever imagine. And yet a lot of the things that we're blessed with, folks, they're not going with us just because you wouldn't want them. Because what is on the other side waiting for us is so much greater than we could ever imagine in this life. That if we get to that life, we will never look back with regret. A.W. Tozer gave a really cool illustration. This is my, some of you probably saw this up here and thinking, what in the world? This is my piggy bank, my R2D2 bank. I take all my spare change from my pockets. Josiah's already volunteering. He's like, yeah. No, you don't get the piggy bank. Sorry. I take all the spare change in my pocket throughout the day, put it in here for our baby bottle drive. That's coming up to Helping Hands. But it reminded me of something, besides the fact I can't catch. You know, I like to go out in nature. I love hiking in the mountains. And A.W. Tozer gave this illustration once. He said, money often comes between men and God. Someone has said that you can take 2 small coins, 2 nickels in fact, and shut out the view of an entire panoramic landscape. If you think about it, it doesn't take much to blind us to the world around us, to the things that are worth investing in, people. Lastly, number 4, because Jesus knows divided devotion is no devotion at all. Look with me at verse 24. Jesus says, no one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. What is Jesus saying there? Well, the other day I consulted a theologian, local theologian. He comes in with his mom when she comes to clean the church. His name's Elijah, fittingly. Actually, it's his birthday today, isn't it? Yeah, cool. He's 5 years old. 5 today. Yeah, 5 years old today. I love it when Elijah comes. I love it. He comes into my office, gets all my Star Wars stuff out, starts playing with it, and then he'll tell me a story. And I'm getting ready. I'm studying my word. I'm studying the Bible, and I'm sitting in my office. I'm thinking, I wonder what Elijah thinks about this passage. What does this mean? And so I sit him down. I'm just talking. Help me understand this, Elijah. No, he's a 5-year-old, so, there's a little bit of back and forth there. But at the same rate, I get to this point in the text. I say, Elijah, what do you think Jesus means when he says, no one can serve 2 masters? He goes, well, duh. No one can serve 2 masters. And I'm thinking to myself, a 5-year-old can get that. We can get it too. No one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Jesus is laying this out to us. That those who would be his would be a people who were more loyal to him and his kingdom than to anything else, including and especially what we get to possess on earth, right? We're merely stewards of what we're blessed with here on earth. Stewards. Because we recognize it belongs to God. Jesus said this again in Luke 16. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you hate the one and love the other, or you be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. In Luke 12, Jesus tells the guy, he says, sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out. A treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus is telling the people, look, you can't sit on the fence on this one. Get on one side or the other. MacArthur, in his commentary, said, we cannot claim Christ as Lord if our allegiance is to anything or anyone else, including ourselves. Well, that's a hard one, because in our society, it's like it's all about the self. But God says, no, be devoted to me. Be devoted to my kingdom, because it's worth it. It's been said that money will buy you a bed, but not sleep. It'll buy you books, but not brains. Food, but not an appetite. Finery, but not beauty. A house, but not a home. Medicine, but not health. Luxuries, but not culture. Amusements, but not happiness. Religion, but not salvation. A passport to anywhere except heaven. So I think that's kind of what Jesus is getting at here. Now, I want to stretch this out a little bit and challenge us in some ways to think about a text like this in light of our lives, in light of asking ourselves again, what is the way of Jesus in light of what he's talking about here? And so I want to help us think about some things for some potential points of application. And the first one is a big one, right? What is the way of Jesus in light of all this? The first one, to hold loose to what you surely will lose. Again, is it bad to have things? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is if what you have grips your heart more than something beyond this life, you're going to be disappointed. If you're an investor, you've seen this. The market's tanked this year, right? Like, if you... I was thinking about this with the car. Like, we got this car, and we were blessed to have it again. It was new to us, but it's like 10 years old already when we bought it. But it's like, once we drove that car off the lot, its value went... I was told in economics class, 40% of its value is lost once you drive it off the parking lot? If you try to hold on to the things of this world, folks, you're going to lose them, right? And so we can have the things, but we need to hold them loosely because we're just steward of what we are blessed with. We're just stewards of what we are blessed with. And there is a treasure that we can build up for ourselves that will bring glory and honor to God when we leave this life and go on into the next. And I think someone that really inspires me in this regard was a missionary by the name of Jim Elliot. Some of you guys have heard that name before, but he said this: "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." Jim Elliot was a missionary in the 1950s, somewhere around then. Crazy story, and a really good movie, although this is not a movie for children, but it's called The End of the Spear. Talks about what happened to him, but he was going into Ecuador to try to reach an unreached people group, unreached tribe in Ecuador in the 50s. Him and his missionary buddies, they would fly these planes over this area, this village, and they would drop via parachute, like things to help these people out, food, things to help them out to kind of build a bridge with these people in hopes of reaching them one day. But they were told, you better be careful because these guys are violent. Well, eventually they built up enough courage and enough rapport, they thought, that they landed the plane on the bank of a river nearby the tribe and set up camp a little ways from the village, but close enough that the people knew that they were there. And so these tribe members would come a little bit, and they would give them more things to try to build a relationship with them because they wanted to give them the gospel, until one day a bunch of tribe members came and killed them all. Jim didn't get to share the gospel with these people, but his treasure was in this fact that there was a gospel worth telling these people about. Later on, his wife, after he was killed, went back and was able to reach this group of people and share with them the gospel. And this village of people turned their lives over to Christ. What's fascinating, this week in my research, I was thinking about this, really inspired by his story, the fact that his treasure was in Jesus so much that he was willing to give his life for this. And his wife was also to go back and minister to these people. And I came across an interview of one of the men that was a part of the group that killed Jim Elliot. Let's watch this clip.
He's
saying, people, do you know how to walk God's trail? He gave us his markings. My heart was dark like my shirt. God calling to me said, which trail do you want to walk? And I finally answered, I want to walk your trail. Why would I walk my own trail with no place waiting for me there? He says in God's place, it's like odo, it's like gold. It's a very good place. He knows we all wear gold to signify precious, and so he's saying, you folks like gold, wait till you get to God's place. He's inspired.
He
He said, I think you were like me. Before, you didn't see this trail either, did you? Somebody has to teach us to walk the trail. Somebody has to teach us the markings, and then we need to teach others. Later, he says, when I was living badly, then what happened? Then Star, Aunt Rachel, and Woodpecker, Aunt Betty, she's very tall, long neck. He said, they came, and they are the ones that taught me God's markings. My heart was dark. My heart was dark like this. How could I see? How could I see? Nobody had ever showed me this trail. I didn't know how to walk it. I said no to the king. What the king said, I said no at first. But God called my own name to him. Now my heart is not dark anymore. God sent His own Son down here to the dirt so that He could show us how. Why would you not want to walk the same trail that God's own Son, His only Son, marked for us with His blood?
I saw that and I was just like, I was moved to tears because here I'm thinking, wow, Jim valued these people enough to risk his life to go teach them about something, a place, and a someone that they could go to. And again, I think this is one of those challenges for us to hold loose to that, what we will surely lose. And in light of what we just saw, be to invest in what can never be lost. Think about it. What is it that will never be lost? Martin Luther said this, I've held many things in my hands and I have lost them all, but whatever I have placed in God's hands, that I still possess. And lastly, in light of even that video again, right? See, to truly make Jesus king. We come to a day like Palm Sunday. Jesus enters into Jerusalem. They're wanting a king. They're wanting a Messiah to save them from Rome. They're ready to put Jesus on the throne by force. But Jesus came to be king by choice. Not king over a country, but king over people's hearts and lives. And when Jesus entered into Jerusalem that Palm Sunday, that Lamb Selection Day, He's essentially telling the people, I'm here, I want to be the Lamb, choose me. Make me king over your hearts. Choose what I have to offer. Invest in what I have to offer. Because what I have to offer will last into eternity, folks. And I think this is one of those things that we need to think about. What is it that possesses our hearts? Is it Jesus? Is it the kingdom? Or is it something else? We cannot serve two masters. David Platt, in his book, Counterculture, wrote this, God is our great treasure, and our lives will count on earth only when we invest them in His kingdom for eternity. I don't know, that might mean someone in here going to a place like Ecuador to share with people the good news of Jesus so that they too can be in. There's a lot of people in heaven in Ecuador because Jim went to serve and his wife went down there to preach the gospel. But it might mean walking down the street and telling someone the good news, or sharing something of good news with your neighbor about Jesus Christ. Telling them about, inviting them to enter into the kingdom, to make Jesus king of their hearts and lives. Thinking of missionaries, David Livingstone was a Scottish physician, and he was a pioneer missionary to the continent of Africa in the late 19th century. He loved what he got to do. He was, again, a Christian missionary pioneer to Africa. And it said that it said that the body of David Livingstone was buried in England where he was born, but his heart was buried in Africa where he loved. And there's this tale that says that at the foot of a tall tree in a small African village, the natives there dug a hole and placed his heart in the ground by this tree of this man, the heart of this man who they loved and respected. And when I heard that, I think to myself, wow, where is my heart? Is my heart in my pocketbook? Is my heart wrapped up in my social profile? Is my heart in my portfolio? Is my heart in some cubicle? Or in some work I do? Or is my heart in something that's going to outlast even this shell? Where is your heart? That's the challenge to think about today, folks. In my gospel connection application today is this: Jesus came to seek and save all who will but put him on the throne of their hearts. Jesus came to be king, but not the king people so often assume. Jesus came to rule over hearts and lives, to take us, forgive us, and transform us into something far better, something eternal, and calls us to invest in that which is eternal. I don't know where you're at this morning in that regard, but folks, if you haven't made Jesus king of your heart, I would invite you to even just mark right on your welcome sheet. I'd love to call you this week and talk to you about what Jesus has done in my life and how he can be king of your heart. But also, talk to any number of people in this room this morning that have done that have placed Jesus on the throne of their hearts, that have made Jesus their treasure, because you know what? He's doing something in their lives that he wants to do in yours as well. Where is your heart? Let's pray. Father, I pray that you'd help us, because so oftentimes, Lord, as Americans, if we're honest, our heart is, and our treasure is in the money we make, or the power that we establish, or the professions that we choose. Lord, and if we're honest, our treasure is so often in things that aren't going to last a moment after we die. And so, Lord, I pray that you'd help challenge us this morning. For us to want you, to seek you for our treasure more than anything else, God, to hold loose to the things of this world so as we can invest in the things that will outlast this world. And Lord, I don't know who's here, but if there's someone here that, or maybe even someone on the live stream, they're thinking to themselves, you know, I haven't done that. I haven't made Jesus my treasure. I haven't chosen him to be my king. God, I pray they'd reach out to me or someone else they know that has done that, so that they can share with them the good news that Jesus has come to save them and invite them into a kingdom that will never perish, spoil, or fade. What an amazing thing, Jesus. We thank you so much for that kingdom and pray that you'd be with us now in Jesus' name.